Hi, this is Dan Sullivan, and today I've got a great question from Chris. And he asks about the importance of sodium in your diet, the dangers of getting too little sodium, and he also says, also, most people still incorrectly believe sodium causes circulatory issues. So, sodium is very, very important in your diet. Getting the right amount. So there's a lot of misconceptions around how much sodium we need and how much constitutes too much sodium. Also, the differences between table salt versus stuff like Himalayan sea salt, which I'm sure you've been seeing more of. The pink stuff, the pink mineralized salt, the sea salts, and so forth. So, what's the difference? What's the deal there? So, salt is very crucial to electrolytes and electrolyte balance in the body, especially when people are sweating. They're sweating those electrolytes out. That's why Gatorade is huge. Although I don't recommend drinking Gatorade because of the sugar content, and also some of the chemicals in there as well. But anyway, so sodium, a lot of people think that too much sodium will actually raise blood pressure, and in fact it does raise blood pressure, but not significantly. So it can raise your blood pressure a little bit, but there's sort of a ceiling that it hits. So the more sodium that you eat or consume, the blood pressure is not going to keep on raising higher and higher. So there's a limit there. So there's a little bit of misconception around that. So, but in any case, I would recommend having sea salt, or the Himalayan sea salt especially, so that way you get the minerals. There's all kinds of different minerals that are in there in those types of salts that are stripped away from other salts. So like table salt versus the sea salt, so you're going to be getting a ton of stuff like zinc and magnesium and other minerals that are in there. Now, the thing with consuming sea salt instead of regular salt is that regular salt, most of the time it's iodized, so they add in the iodine to that to try to prevent stuff like goiter, which you might have heard of, but it's basically where your thyroid becomes super inflamed. And so, and that could be caused by the deficiency of iodine. So to prevent that, they basically put in iodine or iodized our salt supply. So when you have sea salt, you actually do not get that iodine because it's not iodized. So, and your thyroid does need ample amounts of iodine in order to function properly. So I would recommend, if you're only consuming sea salt, which I do recommend, so if you're doing that, I would recommend consuming some sea vegetables, so stuff like kelp, or dulse, or nori. You can sprinkle that stuff on salads. They might not have that at a regular grocery store, unfortunately, but any sort of natural food stores, you're going to be able to find that stuff, where you can buy it on Amazon. Whatever you want to do is fine. So you can just sprinkle some of that on periodically, on a salad, or if you're cooking like a stew or a bone broth, you can put a piece of the seaweed in there and just let that kind of soak in there. So that's a way to avoid getting the iodized salt, so you're still consuming the salt, the sea salt, which is a better form of it, especially Himalayan sea salt, so you're getting all those minerals and those vitamins in there, but you're not getting the iodine from the iodized salt. So I just want to make sure I'm covering everything here. So actually, when you don't have enough salt, so people that don't eat very much or consume very much salt at all, that actually is not very good either. So you do need adequate amounts of salt, not too much, not too little, but essentially you need salt to make your blood, make the blood flow, help with perfusion, so getting the blood flow up into the brain especially. So when people say they have super low blood pressures, that's actually not a good thing. So that's different than having a low pulse rate. So having a low blood pressure is going to be much different, and so you don't want that. You actually need adequate blood pressure. It's sort of like a hose. You need adequate pressure to shoot the water through the hose. If you don't have enough pressure, there's not going to be any water coming out. So the same thing goes for your brain. your brain needs that a certain amount of pressure, right? Not too much pressure, because the hose will burst, but you need adequate pressure to get the blood into the brain. And so, especially when you're an athlete, or if you're hitting the sauna periodically, if you're sweating, if you live in a warm climate, it's going to be imperative to be, sprinkling in some salt in your food, some Himalayan sea salt in your food in order to replenish those stores that you lose through sweating. Let me just see here. So I talked about getting enough blood pressure so you can get enough blood flow to your brain. Too little sodium can lead to imbalanced electrolytes, and then especially when you're an athlete, you're using the sauna, etc., you need to replace more sodium. So, I think there's a lot of hype around too much sodium. If you have high blood pressure, I wouldn't go crazy on, Himalayan sea salt or regular salt, but at the same time, you do need to have adequate amounts of salt, and so it's harder to overdo it when you're consuming natural sources like the sea salts or like the Himalayan sea salt. So I'd highly recommend those. And then especially like if you're cramping and stuff, making sure you're drinking plenty of water. And then when you are sweating, I would just sprinkle in, like if you're doing hot yoga, if you're doing saunas, if you're doing some sort of endurance events, I would definitely take some sea salt and then put that in and be drinking that periodically, or even drink some of that prior to the workout if it's going to be a sort of a longer duration, like a longer, like a triathlon or something like that, or if you're going for a long run outside and it's warm, you're going to be sweating a lot. I guess it's not too practical to be carrying water while you're running, but in any case, like if you're biking or something, you can even load up beforehand so that you have adequate sodium. And sometimes I'll do that before a hard workout. I know I'm going to be sweating a lot, and so I'll actually take some stuff, some Himalayan sea salt, and then sprinkle it in some water and drink that prior to the workout, since I know I'm going to be losing those electrolytes. So kind of preventatively working at it that way, instead of just going into it somewhat possibly depleted and then having a worse workout because of that. So hopefully that helps. I know that was kind of a lot of information, but if you do have any questions, please comment below. I'd be happy to answer those. And as always, thanks for watching.